Hello again everyone, Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about misconceptions about the zodiac sign Sagittarius. Now, as many of you know, a Sagittarius is a sign when we look at it, and as far as characteristics, can often be very expansive, optimistic, exuberant, ebullient, very kind of happy-go-lucky personality. They generally they really are about optimism very strongly, and similar to like Pisces, they like to see the positive in situations, and even see they find some good in even the most adverse circumstances. But I think what it is a lot of people will look at certain signs superficially, and they just automatically may think, well, this person is exuding these characteristics 24/7, when it's not always the case, because as many of you know, an astrological chart is very intricate, a lot of nuances, and it can be complex, and a person is made up with a lot more than just their sun, moon, or ascendant. Now, somebody having the sun, moon, or ascendant in Sagittarius, well, for one thing, let's take somebody that, let's say they have the sun in Sagittarius, and let's say their rising sign is Scorpio. Now, the Scorpio rising is going to blend in with that Sagittarius sun. It's going to be a strong modification, because as far as the outer characteristics and demeanor, the person is going to be a lot more reserved, secretive, and introverted, as opposed to the typical Sagittarius. Now, that's something to really consider when you're looking at this zodiac sign Sagittarius. Now, let's say another example can be, let's say somebody has the sun, moon, or ascendant in Sagittarius, and they have the majority of their planets, or preponderance of planets, below the horizon, which is in houses 1 through 6. Well, this could be somebody that can be a little bit more pessimistic than your typical Sagittarius, a little bit perhaps even more subjective, and a little bit more introverted and private than the average Sagittarius person. If the person has a majority of their planets, let's say, in feminine signs, meaning introverted signs, that is also going to factor in as well, and the person will not will really, more likely than not, they will not be as gregarious or outgoing as the typical Sagittarius personality. Now, another example, something to look at, is let's say that the person is born on the cusp, or as far as the sun, moon, or ascendant in Sagittarius, and say if they're either on the cusp of Scorpio or Capricorn. If they're on the cusp of Scorpio, this person may be a little bit more private than your typical Sagittarius person, have a little bit more emotional intensity in their makeup. There might be perhaps even some Scorpio type interests, such as occult, supernatural things connected with astrology, investigation. Now, if they're born on the cusp, let's say, of Capricorn, let's say somebody had Sagittarius at 28 degrees for their rising sign, and they either had all or a lot of Capricorn degrees in their natal chart, well, this person can will have a little bit of Capricorn in their makeup, and may come across as a little bit sterner, a little bit more serious than your typical Sagittarius ascendant. May even seem a little bit more furlong, have a little bit more melancholy, may appear despondent a little bit more on average, as opposed to the generally expansive and buoyant Sagittarius rising person. If someone has Sagittarius rising and their chart ruler is in the 12th house, which is another example, they can be a lot more private than your typical Sagittarius personality. Now, Sagittarius is often a sign where you associate them with being outdoorsy and doing things connected with sports. Now, if somebody has Sagittarius and say has a, for example, a Taurus or Capricorn ascendant, not only will they be more reserved than your typical Sagittarius, they might not be as inclined to be that adventurous type and go out on, whether it might be expeditions or just doing things of a sports, things connected with sports as far as their interests may go. So that's another thing to take into consideration with the sign Sagittarius. Also, what's important too is to look at the decan or decadent that your Sagittarius sun, moon, or ascendant falls in. And let's say somebody has they have their sun in Sagittarius, and let's say it's in the second decan, which would be Aries. Well, this person will have a little bit of Aries blended in with their Sagittarius personality, maybe a little bit. Sagittarius can be blunt anyway, but with Aries mixed in, it can even come across as a little bit more outspoken, a little bit more fearlessness injected, a little bit more, maybe even a little impatience blended in with the generally easygoing Sagittarius personality and disposition. Now, let's say somebody had the moon in Sagittarius and they had, or sun, moon, ascendant in Sagittarius, and they had the Leo decan or decadent, which would be that third decan, which would be between 20 degrees Sagittarius and 29 degrees 59 minutes of arc of Sagittarius. That would be a person that may be, well, I like to say a little bit more immutable, a little bit more fixed in their way, a little bit more inflexible, more dignified, maybe a little bit more domineering than your typical Sagittarius personality, a little bit more persistence and tenacity as well, due to the fact that Leo is a fixed sign, and you'll have some of that pride and that dignity, that dignified way mix in with Sagittarius. Also, another thing to look at, if somebody has a sun in Sagittarius, you figure around a third of the time they're going to have, or I should say only a third of the time, their Mercury will be in Sagittarius, and then the other 2/3 it'll either be in Capricorn or Scorpio. Now, if somebody has the sun in Sagittarius and their Mercury is in Capricorn, well, this person can very likely be a little bit more serious in their communications. Mercury in Capricorn can also be somewhat intransigent and flexible in the matter of how they are thinking. This could be somebody more methodical, more deliberate in their thought process, a little bit more premeditative. And let's say the person had the Mercury in Scorpio. Well, a sun in Sagittarius with Mercury in Scorpio, well, they're not always going to be so readily able, wanting to divulge a lot of things in their life, and they're not going to be readily talk about perhaps things as easily as Mercury in Sagittarius would be, and because Mercury in Sagittarius I would see as being more freer with what they reveal, and Mercury in Scorpio is a little bit more secretive and a little bit more about suppressing things, especially those of a personal nature as far as what they like to communicate to others. And with Mercury in Scorpio, the person might have a little bit of interest perhaps in Scorpio-like things, and in terms of astrology, occult, supernatural matters, things that are hidden, things that are mysterious. So those are some things to consider when you're looking at the zodiac sign Sagittarius. It's always important to look at the chart as a whole and not isolate any one particular thing in a natal chart. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Misconceptions about Sagittarius. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be continuing my series on duplicated houses. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because a person astrologically is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.